Ross and I are back at it again, but this time we're talking about defensive HBCU prospects that would fit with the Saints. And Gerald Huggins, the HBCU, joins as we keep on going with Big Five and our top 10 draft eligible HBCU player list. Oh, yeah, it's Locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked on HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum, and former TSU Herald sports editor. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. With more odds, props, and lines than ever before, BetOnline has you covered for everything that you need this season. BetOnline, where the game starts. And if you remember just a couple of days ago, me and Ross, we talked about offensive HBCU prospects that could fit with the New Orleans Saints. Now Ross and I are back again, but we're talking about defensive players from the HBCU ranks that could fit with the New Orleans Saints. And we're talking mostly about our guy. Yes, I said it, Ross. Our guy, Markquese Bell out of FAMU.
All right, Darian, listen, we've talked offense. Now we're going to talk defense. And you've come at me. You've come at me about this guy a couple times, saying I've been stealing your thunder. I'm stealing your draft takes, everything like that. So here's your chance to hold my feet to the fire and talk a little bit about. I'll be nice. I'll call him your guy for right now. FAMU safety Markquese Bell. How he potentially fits in on the New Orleans Saints over on the defensive side.
First off, you're just being accurate. You're not being nice. You're being accurate. Okay. That is my guy. All right. Now, I wish I could flip this camera. I have my favorite number is 5. I've been very open about my love for the number 5. I have a 5 jersey hanging up in my room because that was my little league number, has my name on it. Yes. So that is my guy, Markquese Bell, number 5 out of FAMU. But this is not about me. This isn't about you. This is about one of the best safeties in the FCS. This guy is so freaking talented. And I just did an episode about him on Monday where I was talking about how I felt like he had kind of fell down draft boards, but he had a really good combine. And we'll talk about him as a player, but I want to first show some of the traits that I think made people go back to the film and see what he's really about. And that is the fact that he ran a 4.4 140. There was some draft profiles from Lance Zierlein, I believe, who said he had tight hips. Well, in the field work, he kind of got rid of that. He showed to have really good hips, and I think that went a long way because I said something, I think it might be controversial, but you have to hear me out.
All right. All right, here we go.
The emphasis on the coverage of HBCUs, the timing of it, I think kind of hampered or changed the way people think about Markquese Bell.
Oh,
that
for sure.
sounds ridiculous.
No,
that sounds
I hear
ridiculous. You. But the fact is, in this season, he was a run-stopping machine, had 15 tackles on multiple occasions. Yes, he can do that. But people don't value those kind of safeties like they used to. They just do not. And it's something that I've been very vocal about on Locked On HBCU, right? But in the year prior, in 2019, he had 5 interceptions, led the MEAC in interceptions. So it was a situation where he can do both, but all eyes were on the HBCU landscape and Markquese Bell when he was doing what I perceive to be the less valued attribute. So I think that some people just say he's a run stopper as if he can't play in coverage. Maybe not a single high, but definitely a 2 deep safety set. I think he could do that a lot.
That's a really, really good point, right? When did we start paying a ton of attention to these draft prospects, especially after last year when no HBCU talent was taken in the draft at all? We expect that to change dramatically this year. That's a really, really great point. And I think that, like, you look at Markquese Bell's skill set, even as a guy that can play in the box, but that can also cover. And you know where that gives me value when I look at the New Orleans Saints? It's in the Malcom Jenkins role. Malcom Jenkins did something really, really interesting this offseason to where he let the last 2 years of his contract, this year in 2023, took a pay cut all the way down to vet minimum, but didn't restructure his contract, right? There was nothing else that he did there. That tends to signal, or has signaled in the past, maybe that there's some retirement being mulled a little bit here. And if that's the case, a guy like Markquese Bell makes a ton of sense to either immediately plug into that role or plug into that role for a year behind a stopgap or something like that. Get adjusted to the NFL speed, stuff like that. Things that are good for all college players, not just HBCU players. And so I think that that's really, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like that's the place where he fits really well. He can play in the box, he can play in the slot, and you can use him in those zone deep coverages as a split safety in cover 2, cover 4 situations.
Yeah, that is exactly where he fits. And I want to speak on the Malcom Jenkins situation, because not only did he do that, he also has said from his mouth that he considers retirement. I think every year was how he said it. Right. You consider retirement every year. It's on the horizon. You know, you compare that to a guy like Demario Davis. We're not talking about him, but Demario Davis, I'm not thinking about retirement. Right. You can look at Demario Davis likely being here for the foreseeable future, maybe even getting a new contract with the way he's talking, as long as the play continues to be constant. But Malcom Jenkins is a guy who they're talking about maybe leaving, if not this year, next year. And if it's Markquese Bell in this role, I actually hope it's next year, because Malcom Jenkins, aside from everything that he does off the field, which is, oh my gosh, amazing, but he also is an absolute leader on the field in a great, and he's extremely smart as well. And he's somebody who can show the game to Markquese Bell. He's a phenomenal person to learn behind, because when I look at Bell, he has a lot of aggression, and a lot of times aggression can be used, you know, maybe kind of against you. You know, sometimes you might be too aggressive playing the run, get caught up, maybe playing the coverage in the back end. That can happen. But learning from Malcom Jenkins, who I believe is really, you know, played a big part in having less coverage breakdowns in that New Orleans Saints secondary since he's been around, I think that he's a guy who could really benefit from that. I really do believe that if Markquese Bell has a year behind Malcom Jenkins, we would see one of the best Markquese Bells that we would be able to see. You know, I'm a Marvel guy, so you're talking about variants, right? All these different types of Markquese Bells, but the Markquese Bell that gets to sit for a year behind Malcom Jenkins, I like that variant.
That's a fantastic point. That's a fantastic point. I would love to see that. Listen, we'll just call Markquese Bell our guy. How about that? FAMU safety, Markquese Bell. He's our guy.
I like you. You my guy. We'll call him our guy.
Yeah, we'll shake on it. We'll shake on it. And hopefully everybody that's listening to this now talks to, or watching this now, talks about Markquese Bell as their guy too, because I do think he'll continue to rise and he would be a great fit in New Orleans. You talked last episode that we did this together. You talked a little bit about like positions of interest as opposed to, you know, holes or things that need to be filled. You look at the defensive positions across the New Orleans Saints. Mike Clay, ESPN, who does sort of position rankings for all teams as they go through free agency in the offseason, has the Saints tied as the #1 defense in the NFL based on personnel. And they have one spot that seemed to be a question mark, which ranked, I believe it was 19th, while everything else was top 10, safety, DB, off-ball linebacker, all that, edge rusher even. I think they were second when it came to edge rusher. And so I think it was DT, interior defensive lineman, they were at 19. So you look at that as probably a position of interest. Are there other positions of interest in your mind when it comes to the Saints, and who are the defensive players at those spots that Saints fans need to know about?
Yeah, so I think let's start off with the back end, because we're already talking about it. We're talking about Markquese Bell. And there is a Malcom Jenkins replacement possibly on the team. However, I don't know if they want to go that route. For years since Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has been around, I thought he might end up being the replacement for Malcom Jenkins. However, Chauncey has really settled in that slot role, so I would understand why they would want to keep him there. Now, let's say that they do decide to put him there behind Malcom Jenkins. I think Jacoby Durant will be a great guy to fill his spot. He's a little bit more of a coverage guy than I think Chauncey is. I think Chauncey is a good cover guy, but he excels more in run support. Jacoby Durant is going to give you the more, I think, prototypical nickel. I know the Saints use a lot of 3 safeties, now 3 corner sets, depending on how you want to really label Chauncey.
Right.
He's more of a nickel corner who's going to be there for coverage, but he would be a good guy to slot there. Another guy, now this is your guy. This is your guy.
Yes.
Joshua Williams.
I knew you were going to do it. I knew you were going to do it to me.
Part of me doesn't want him on the squad, only because I want him to, like, really showcase.
Right.
Here he would be really good because you have Roby, you have Adebo, and you have Lattimore. But after that, who do you really trust to be on the outside? He'd be a great piece for depth. But I want to get to that Mike Clay point of interest. And I have some stats here that I want to read out for one of my favorite players from the HBCU Combine. And that was Keyshawn James. And he's kind of a tweener out of Fayetteville State, Joshua Williams' teammate. In 2017, his first year, he's a freshman, he had 8.5 tackles for a loss. He increased it to 12.5, 16, 23.5 his senior year. You see him continuously rising and rising. In that 2021 year, he was the CIAA Defensive Player of the Year. Let's go to sacks because he's not just a run stopper. In the sacks, he had a 1.5 sacks. Then he went to 8. Then he went to 9.5. Then he went to 10.5. You saw that big jump from the moment from freshman to sophomore year. So I just want to read those. In addition to having 2 or 4 forced fumbles in both this last season in 2021 and the year prior in 2020. And I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted him because this is a guy who I think could really shoot the gap. I think that he's a guy who can play both outside and inside. Once again, the theme of versatility comes up again, just like on the offensive line, the defensive line is the same. I think that Keyshawn James, the guy, I don't think he's going to get drafted, but if you bring him in as an undrafted free agent, and we've seen what kind of luck that the Saints have had with undrafted tackles, defensive tackles specifically, I think he continued that run. He's been really good, and he's gotten better every year, which is a quality that I love in my collegiate players.
Love to see that. I was talking about a wide receiver in college that did the opposite, who had, this breakout year as a true freshman, Justin Ross out of Clemson. And then just trickled off. And I know he dealt with injury. And then of course, like the quarterback quality changed over time, but just not like declined every year as opposed to growing every year. Like we see.
It's hard to be excited about that.
It's
just hard to be excited about that player as opposed to the other way around. And Justin Ross might end up being fantastic. It's just hard to rally the table around that guy,
Yeah. It's a really, really good piece of insight on that. Darian, always a pleasure. I'm sure we're going to be talking again as the draft gets closer and closer. We're now less than a month away from the NFL draft. And just to close this out, we talked and we made mention of it before. No HBCU players taken in the draft last year. Clearly that's changing this year, right?
100%. I think that you have at least 4, maybe 5. I think you probably have 5. Between 5 or 7. I can get my list narrowed down, but I think the 4 that were invited to the combine are going to make it. I think Aquil Glass is going to make it. And I think James Houston has a chance of getting in there as well, out of Jackson State. So that's 6 players right there, I think, that are going to get drafted. And as we get closer, who knows? Make sure you're checking out where every Thursday we do top 10 draft HBCU players, and we're on number 5 this week. So next week will be 4, and we'll be counting down all the way down to the draft. So you'll be able to get some of those guys, some insight from my guy, Gerald Huggins, how to draft HBCU. You just heard us break down in a conversation just detailing how Markquese Bell could really fit with the Saints. And now with Malcom Jenkins' retirement that happened after we recorded that segment, I mean, I can't see any other reason why Markquese Bell would not fit. I love it. But we're going to be talking about some more players from the HBCU ranks, mainly James Houston, a.k.a. The Problem. Let's see if that name actually fits him. But first, I want to tell you about Athletic Greens because, listen, I've been taking Athletic Greens because I wanted to help with my gut health, and I also just wanted a supplement that tasted good, right? Because if you take care of your body, it's a temple, and you also want something that's going to be, easy to put down. And Athletic Greens is definitely that. With one scoop, just a singular scoop, they are providing you with 75 high-quality vitamins, mineral, whole food source superfoods, and probiotics. Listen, this is the best way to start off your day because I personally like to take it at the beginning of my day, either right before I eat breakfast or right after, just because it helps me feel like my body is just rolling and going on the right track throughout the day. Now, they have 7,000 5-star reviews. So don't just take my word for it. Take 7,000 people. We can't all be lying to you, right? I want you to go to athleticgreens.com/college, and they're going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Just go to athleticgreens.com/college. Now, I also want to tell you about Stat Hero because, listen, with Stat Hero, I understand that so many people get enamored with trying to have this perfect bracket. Most people will not. Nobody I know or have ever known has had a perfect bracket. It just doesn't happen. Not often. With Stat Hero, don't worry about it. Don't sulk about having your bracket be busted. Go to stathero.com and you'll be able to vote, or excuse me, bet on individual games. And also in a cool little feature that they have, in which it's a mix of fantasy and betting, you can choose lineups that you want to play against, choose 5 players that you want to play against, and then you can play against them with 5 players of your own choosing. So it's no more, I don't really know Duke, but I want to bet on him. No, you're choosing 5 individual players that you actually know. So you're putting money down on people that you feel like you can actually bet on. That's the best feature. No more guessing when you're doing it. Go to .com/locked-on and use the promo code locked-on for an 100% deposit match. Once again, that is stathero.com/locked-on and use the promo code locked-on for an 100% deposit match. All right, so we keep on rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU. We have Gerald Huggins here, and he's talking about James Houston, a.k.a. The Problem. And I just want to know, is this a fitting name for somebody of his caliber? I only think that it's appropriate that for Big Five, my favorite number, that we only kick it off with this guy that we really connected off of, and that's Houston. They call him The Problem. Why do they call this man The Problem? Is it an appropriate nickname for him?
Oh, for sure. Oh, my God. He's the most versatile defensive player in the draft. Shoot, you might be able to put him in strong safety. I don't know. The guy just seems to be good at everything he does on the football field. It's amazing to watch. And, you know, from the simple standpoint of just the physical attributes, he's 6 feet tall with an 83-inch reach. His reach is pretty much for someone that's about 6'4", 6'5". Guy's a freak. And we know we can get deeper into his numbers at his pro day, but that the tape is there. The eye test is there. What else do you need at this point?
Yeah, well, you mentioned it. Sometimes some people need those pro day numbers, right? The eye test can be there, the tape can be there, but for some reason, and maybe it's just prisoner of the moment, we become attached to these pro day numbers. Well, what does his pro day number say about him?
Oh my God, I think he had a 39-inch, was it 39-inch vert, over 9.5 on his broad. I forgot what I think it was. 40 was like, I think it was sub 4.6 40 or whatever that may be. I'm good because at the end of the day, he could play inside linebacker in a 4-3 or 3-4 scheme. He could play the Sam or Will in a 4-3 scheme, and he could play the outside edge rusher in a 4-3 or a 3-4 scheme. But he's probably, you know, more suitable for something else. I mean, for a 3-4 outside linebacker. But I mean, the stats just pretty much just show why he was able to dominate the way he has, you know. And plus, he did this before he even got to the HBCU level.
That's a perfect segue, and exactly what I want to talk about. Before he did get to the HBCU level, he was at Florida. What are you seeing from his Florida?
I didn't know he was as good of a pass rush. Like, see, it was glimpses of it, you know. But when he got to Jackson, you know, this pass rush, I'm like, where did this come from? But when he was at University of Florida, he was just so versatile. He could drop back into coverage. He is a good tackler, really solid tackler considering. Now, usually don't get edge rushers aren't really, you think of like sure tacklers, but the fact that he and on his University of Florida tape was able to be a short tackler, he was able to break on the ball so fast, and he seemed like he was very smart when it came into coverage. This is like a diamond in the rough to have someone that's your edge rusher that can also do all these different things. And then, you know, I feel like Jackson State utilized him to the best of their ability, but I think end of the day, they was like, listen, James, we need you to rush the passer because you are best pass rusher. So just do what you do. And that led to him being number 2 in the FCS. And it was just it was beautiful to see. Beautiful to see.
So I got to ask you, how's the pec feeling?
Oh, it went down. The swelling went down. My kid's been begging me to lift, but I told him give me another week and I'll get back into it. I feel good though. They feel good.
All right. Feel good enough to demonstrate without hurting yourself. Hey,
listen,
I ain't never letting you live it down. All right.
Yeah, I could do it. Yeah, I could do it.
All right. If you even have to, man. So we got our arm right. We can demonstrate. We can show everything. What is in James Houston's pass rush toolbox?
He is a speed rusher, in my opinion. So sometimes it just comes to him just picking a spot in the backfield. You pick a spot between 3 to 5 yards in the backfield. You just look at that spot and you beat the offensive lineman to that spot. And for, not even for some reason, he's consistently be able to do that. But he also has some other moves that he gets from, well, he's another Chuck Smith guy, just like Deshaun Dixon. He's a Chuck Smith guy. Been trained with Chuck Smith down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And, when you come out of Chuck Smith camp, you're going to have to know how to do a cross chop. And honestly, he's another guy. He can long arm and bull because, well, even at 6 feet tall, his arms are longer than the guy that's going to be blocking him, which is still insane to think about because you just don't have 6 feet tall guys that have 83-inch reach. That's just that. I don't think people understand how hard that is to block because usually, off of the tackle, they lock on to a 6'1" edge rusher. 79-inch reach, which is long. That's not short. It's just when you have 83, that's just like think of like John Bones Jones has, I think he has like 83 or 84 or something. So just think of that. You see how hard it is to get inside on him. So you look at a guy named James Houston. Once he gets his hands on first, which he does, even in his pass rushing, offensive tackles can't get to his chest. And he has a really nice club. His swipe is really good. His double swipe is good. I do like I think he could do a spin a little bit more because he has the ability to make his offensive lineman turn and give them that 50-50 where their back is really just towards the quarterback and their feet aren't staggered. So he gets them to that point where they're basically either backpedaling, or they're just trying to just turn and run to just stop him from getting to the quarterback. And at that point, he just stops his momentum, breaks down, goes inside. So I think he's only going to get better as a pass rusher, which is scary to think. And, the more moves, and then honestly, we don't know where he's going to play. I think he's gonna. I can't even think of I'm trying to think of a defender that's as versatile as him. And I'm struggling. And I've tried. I'm just trying to think of someone that's 6 foot, 240 something pounds, that fast, that athletic, and with those long limbs. I'm trying. Maybe I'll get one to you in a few weeks. But right now, I'm just really struggling to find a good comparison for him.
All right, so you just heard Gerald with a slightly better pec. I'm never going to let him live that one down. But you heard him just able to detail James Houston's pass rush toolbox. I really do love those kind of things, those conversations. But let's see what else he has outside of just being a pass rusher. Let's talk a little bit of versatility. And speaking of versatility, it's versatile. I'm talking about Built Bars because it's a protein bar that tastes just like a candy bar. And honestly, if that's what you want to use it for, something that just tastes good, it does that as well. I haven't told you this in a minute, but it is the Swiss Army knife of all protein bars because it has the health benefits because that's 17 grams of protein, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 net carbs. So you get all that protein and not much of sugar and net carbs. So you love that for your health benefits. Body's a temple, right? But then you can also just get it to be tasty because it's covered in chocolate. And if you want to take it even a step farther, then you could talk about the Built Bar Puffs that's covered in chocolate and has marshmallows and all of those same benefits. If you just want a snack, get it. It tastes good. That's what it is, man. It is so versatile. It is the Swiss Army knife of protein bars, and you know where to find it at built.com. And I want to save you a little money. So come here. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your offer. All right, so wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, we're going to be talking about James Houston, not just as a pass rusher, but just the versatility and something special, because if you can play all over the field, you are only that much more valuable. You just mentioned the comparison. Well, if you ask Coach Deion Sanders, I'll throw a guy out there and I'll see what you think about it. And Coach Deion Sanders says that a comparison for James Houston's style of play and James Houston as a player will be Cowboys' defensive weapon, Parsons. What do you think? How are you feeling about the Parsons-Houston comparison?
Okay, I see it. To my knowledge, that Parsons went into Penn State as a defensive lineman, as an edge rusher. Then they converted him to linebacker. Then he went
like the
back
reverse James Houston.
You know what I'm saying? So you know what? That's not bad. I think Michael Parsons may be a tad bit of a better athlete. I mean, you that big running 4.3. I mean, and then this crazy part, his teammate, who's also an edge rusher, ran a 4.3 as well at 250 pounds. I don't know what they're drinking at Penn State. Something that I probably should have drunk back in 2011. But anyway, so listen, this I could take that because when it comes to versatility, but I think even James Houston may be slightly better at the 4.3 linebacker spot than Micah Parsons is. Slightly. Because he's older. If I'm not mistaken, he's older. I think he might have some more games under his belt. And based on his watching the film, he seems really comfortable picking up tight ends. He's really comfortable dropping back in the zone. And you could tell he's smart. You could tell he studies the game. So, and who am I? Deion Sanders says he's going to comp him to Micah Parsons. Who am I to disagree? I don't disagree at all. I think that's probably the best build you could look at. I mean, they're both freak athletes, but at the end of the day, they're both James Hughes is going to get drafted. Now, it depends on what day, but he's going to get drafted. He's one of the more guaranteed guys. The top 5 is pretty much like, those are the guys that are going to go. So where's he going to fall? Who knows? But will he be one of the most versatile players in the NFL? For sure. Even if his first year he just ends up being special teams, which I don't think he will because he's a really good player, and I think he will have some opportunity at least getting a third down. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, it's just hard to keep a guy like that on the field that can play both end spots, all 3 linebacker spots.
It would be.
Yeah, it's just hard to do it. So, good comp, Deion. Hey, listen, you got it, my brother. You got it. I'm sorry, not Deion. Coach Sanders. I remember he don't like me. Coach Sanders. Sorry.
That's a hard habit to break. I ain't gonna lie, I don't really break it here. If I ever were to speak to him and he would say it though, like I would break it. I need to try to break it here. But we spoke about his versatility, and you talked about he can play both ends, all 3 linebackers in all 3 linebacker spots in a 4.3. Well, what does his tape say as an edge rusher as opposed to a off-ball linebacker?
I feel like his tape says his athleticism would make him a better fit at the outside linebacker because he's just much more athletic than the guy that's going to block him. And if he's not in a scheme that doesn't have their inside guys is complete, like, think of like when the Ravens were really good and when the Niners were really good, even when the Panthers were really good, what did they have? They had 2 or 3 huge dudes in the middle, and no one touched Ray. No one touched Patrick Willis. No one touched Thomas Davis and Luke Kuechly. So if he's in a situation like that, he would thrive. He would thrive at the inside linebacker spot, Sam and Will, or in the 2 inside backers in the 3-4. But if you want to put him ideally in a 3-4 situation, where you're just saying, hey, James, listen, you're going to pass rush. You're going to be on the edge. You're not going to drop back in coverage. Maybe you probably drop back in coverage maybe 25, 30% of the time. But other than that, you're just going to use your athleticism and your training that you've been getting from Chuck Smith or whoever he's been training with, even at Jackson State or even with his training from back at UF. You use that training, your athleticism, to beat the mess out of the offensive tackle every time. Because it's just I feel bad for offensive tackle sometimes. Because I literally watch Micah Parsons, a guy who's just, and not even just Micah Parsons, even James, you just watch them. It's like, dang, these guys don't have a shot. Like, these freak athletes, they're like defensive line. They have the best athletes play D line. I know I'm biased, but
you are.
I mean, the proof is in the pudding, man. Like these, who else I need to show? I mean, Chandler Jones and you got the Watts. I mean, you just look at these these edge guys. They could probably. Well, we've seen it with Julius Peppers just being a UNC Tar Heel and playing in the March Madness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
there are some good athletes. I'm not gonna sit here and disrespect them. There are some good athletes.
Yeah, listen,
that's for sure.
They're great. And then not saying offensive tackles aren't, but they have to go backwards on these pass sets We're going forward. It's kind of reverse for.
Oh,
so
did you hear that? Did you hear that? We going forward? Nah, you exposed to. Nah, it's good. You already claimed you biased. So
yeah, I'm biased. I don't care. Listen, I think all offensive linemen hold and have bad feet. Unless you're Trent Williams or Teron Armstead, I don't care about you. But that's just me. Yeah, you know. Yeah, for sure. That's that's my thing. I'm a stickler on that, and I'm gonna stick to it until the day I die. D-line runs it. So it's kind of like a reverse. What cornerbacks get from receivers is what offensive linemen get from D linemen. So, I just think all receivers are just way too big and way too athletic for corners, and I think these D linemen are just way too big and way too athletic for these offensive linemen. They're pretty much similar size. You got a dude like Cam Haywood, size of every guard in the NFL, and then he's more athletic than him. So James Houston, back to him. At Florida, he had a great career there. At Jackson, he dominated.
Yeah, so that was a big difference. And
so you know what I'm saying? So
that was a great difference. Honestly.
What's literally to say that he's gonna just stop now? There's nothing that shows that he's met his peak. Nothing. He's like, he's if he becomes a full-time pass edge rusher, this could get really scary. And I want to see it. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully he goes to a team, a 3-4 scheme that'll have him be able to play both. I could see it wouldn't hurt maybe have him on the other side of TJ Watt in Pittsburgh. That might not be a bad spot. That's probably my favorite spot for him, to be honest with you. Just thinking of that. He could play there. Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I like it. You always give me good content, man. Whether that's the comparison of the cornerbacks and wide receivers to defensive linemen and offensive linemen, or putting them right there next to the Steelers. I absolutely love it. Next week, we'll be back with number 4. This is Can't Miss content every Thursday. I hope that you're checking it out, and I hope that you're paying. Well, obviously, you're checking it out. You're listening. I hope you realize it, man. Tell a friend to tell a friend, because they don't want to miss this. I promise that. Gerald Huggins, Draft HBCU. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you once again.
Gerald's always coming through with the great breakdowns, man. That's why I always enjoy doing this every Thursday. When I tell you it is can't miss content, I absolutely mean it. If you miss it, always circle back. Always make sure you're coming back to Thursdays for Top 10 Thursdays. I'm going to try to make a playlist. I got to figure out how to make a playlist of that on my YouTube page so that they can all be together. In case you missed an episode, you can always come back to it. But y'all know, man, Thursdays, Fridays, does not matter. Make sure that Locked On HBCU is your first listen of the day every day. And I actually have a really special podcast for tomorrow. I have a guest coming on who made some topics or made a comment that wasn't the best received in HBCU Twitter. I want to hear what his side of it is, if anything has changed for him. So you will not want to miss that. And for your second listen of the day, make sure you're checking out Locked On NFL Draft. Eric Crockett, former NFL and AFL cornerback, right there with Ryan Tracy, giving you everything that you could possibly need for the big event in April. There's no problem in having an excess of information, and they are the exact podcast that you need to be listening to get yourself educated. And y'all know the drill. In the meantime, in between time, y'all can find me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Holla at your boy. Until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace.